So we would like to again apologize for the technical issues and inconvenience during the conference. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our honorable guest speaker, Mr. Chhem Siriwat and Mr. Penh Chanda, who will give the presentation on the topic ASEAN's digital currency for greater economic integrations. But unfortunately, Mr. Chhem Siriwat and Mr. Penh Chanda could not make it to our training physically, but both speakers will give the presentation virtually as the dialogue conference. So for the Q&A session, we would like to invite you to do the same thing. Go to our Facebook group and then post your question as a comment. So a little bit about Mr. Siriwat and Mr. Penh Chanda. Mr. Chhem Siriwat is a director of the Center for Inclusive Digital Economy at ASEAN Vision Institute. He is also currently a digital business consultant at Phnom Penh's commercial banks. Mr. Siriwat is also a visiting professor at Kirirong Institute of Technology and a digital business consultant at Shopify. And for Mr. Penh Chanda, he is a CEO of the Bongloy, the Southeast Asia's best fintech company, and is currently serving as a council member of Association of Bank Cambodia, the chair of National QR Code Task Force Committee, and chairman of Cambodia Associations of Finance and Technologies. So, Mr. Siriwat and Mr. Chanda, the virtual stack is yours. Please start when you are ready.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. So it's my pleasure that I can invite my good friend, Mr. Chanda. He is an expert on today's topic, about digital currency. And within, the big picture of ASEAN digital currency for greater economic integration, both of us have, different, let's say, connections or roles in this. So maybe I can just quickly explain for myself. The institute that I'm at, Asian Vision Institute, is a policy research institute. So it's a think tank. And the center that I'm running is on inclusive digital economy. So we do research on, digital and technology in Cambodia's economy, but not from the technical aspect, but more on the policy side. So what kind of policies are required in order to support, all of these new technologies that are being used and utilized in Cambodia. And then on the other side, I'm also a digital business consultant for PPC Bank. So of course, being from the banking sector on the digital side, this does have some connection to the national digital currency or what's going to happen in the rest of the region. So maybe Chanda can give a little bit of his also, explanation of how he's linked to digital currency in Cambodia.
Sure. Thank you, Siriwat, and thank you everyone for having me this morning. So my role play in a couple areas. One, I run a fintech company here in Cambodia. The second part, I chair the Fintech Association and also part of the council member of the Association of Banks of Cambodia. We do interact quite often within the region to other central banks and also Association of Banks to discuss about potential integration. Here we can talk a bit about what we're looking to do. As you know, in the news lately, we're looking at integrating between Thailand and Cambodia to be able to do digital payments cross-border. And there are some challenges as well and some opportunities that we can talk about and look at. So we'll leave it at that for now.
Great. Okay, thank you so much for sharing. So again, thanks for your valuable time. Digital currency is a hot topic, so I think we can just go straight into it by giving kind of a few definitions or perspectives on it. So for the first topic, let's talk about what is the difference between digital currency and cryptocurrency.
Okay, yeah. So I think this is something that we really need to distinguish between the two. First, let's talk about cryptocurrency. So as you know, cryptocurrency is global, it's everywhere, and that's and you're probably familiar with crypto coins like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many others. With that said, it's not heavily regulated yet, and it's being used, it's being transacted all over the world. With that said, digital currency here in Cambodia, we have something like Ba Kong, which is basically a legal tender issued by the central bank. And so it's real money. And other countries right now are looking at testing this technology in converting physical cash into digital cash in a sense. And China is one of the countries that's pushing forward to doing that. And so really the big difference that you have to look at is that the digital currency that we're talking about is issued by the central bank. So instead of printing cash, they issue digital notes or digital currency, where cryptocurrency is actually being issued by a private sector. And so we don't really know what the true value of that digital cryptocurrency is. I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, if you were to buy something with a Bitcoin, now that Bitcoin is worth probably 4 to 5 times as much now. So if you were to buy something, you gain. If you were to sell something, you would actually lose a lot of money. And so that's really the difference between the two, between digital currency versus cryptocurrency. You're on mute.
Okay, so thanks for your quick explanation. So it covers quite a lot of technical aspects and impacts on different sector. Maybe for let's say the more general understanding, it might be a bit confusing because the national digital currency in Cambodia, what will be happening with the National Bank in Ba Kong is blockchain based. And then we have cryptocurrency, which, by its nature is also blockchain based. So how do you see the similarities and the differences?
The global, something like the cryptocurrency, they're more of a public blockchain, using public blockchain technology, which, as you know, in terms, let me explain, I guess, a bit about what blockchain really is. So blockchain is a distributed ledger. The reason why companies or people are using blockchain is because of the consensus, meaning that whatever is being recorded is actual, real, true data. With the digital currency here, it's also using blockchain, but it's more of a private blockchain. So it's being controlled by the central bank. And so with our Ba Kong system, it's actually controlled by the National Bank of Cambodia. Therefore, you can't just issue or mine, in a sense, coins. So really, that's the big difference is looking at between public and private blockchain, and that's really where you see the crypto side is using cryptocurrency is using a public ledger that's being readily available. You connect to it, you can have access to it. Where for our side, you can only use it here in Cambodia.
Okay, yeah, those are some good points. So recently I've been doing some more research, I guess, to compare digital currency versus cryptocurrency. And I came across something that's quite clear with the explanation. So maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. So for the first point of digital currency versus cryptocurrency, digital currency is fully centralized, while cryptocurrency is fully decentralized. And then the second point is that digital currency is surrounded by legal frameworks, within a nation, whereas cryptocurrency is not surrounded by legal frameworks. And then the third point is that transaction directories are kept secret, for digital currency. Those are more, let's say, confidential and private. And then on the other hand, cryptocurrency, the transaction directories are, visual to all and open to the public. And the final part, the more technical aspect, is that digital currency is not encrypted, whereas cryptocurrency is highly encrypted. So what do you think about all these points?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're correct on that, and I think we really need to look at or not confuse ourselves when we talk about digital currency. The digital currency is just a replacement of physical cash, and it's real money. And you know, if in our case here with Bakong, you know, whatever you have in Bakong is your actual cash, and you can redeem it at any given time. Where if you have a cryptocurrency, whether it's Ethereum or Bitcoin, you can't cash it out unless somebody buys it from you. And that's the risk that you have to look at. And that value of what you have, if you have one Bitcoin today, it may be worth 37,000, or maybe worth the next day, maybe worth 1,000, or you can't even get money out. And so these are the different risks that you have to look at, and try not to confuse between what a digital currency is versus a cryptocurrency.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. So I think now that, you know, we're kind of on a roll and we have an understanding of the general picture, we can move on to the second part. So for the second part, you know, around the world, a lot of nations are, you know, moving forward with their initiatives on, you know, a national digital currency. There are a few countries who have, you know, started. There are a few countries who have already achieved it and are trying to like pilot and experiment. So some of these countries are like, you know, China, Ukraine, Estonia, Senegal, even Sweden. So from your perspective, you know, in the whole world, where do you see that these kind of, you know, national digital currencies are being effective, and what's the challenge to really implement it throughout the whole country?
Okay, so digital currency would be definitely be affected if the central banks are issuing it, like Senegal forming a union in Africa to really take everything to be more digital and not have use and not use physical cash, and even Estonia. But I think the issue with Estonia is that they may not be part of they're part of the European Union. So if they issue their own currency and it's not being accepted in a digital currency and not accepted in the European Union, that may also have an issue. And so but China, on the other hand, because of their global dominance in the market today, they are pushing more of the digital currency out there. It's their way of tracking how people are spending money and where that money is going. And so that's going to be a big push on their part from China to be able to track every dollar spent or every yen spent, so they know the movement of money. So globally, if you look at it now, I think the U.S. is also looking at issuing their own digital currency as well. So the question then would be that which digital currency will be the most dominant in terms of global trade. And so this is going to be within the next 2-3 years, you'll probably see these big powerhouses fighting to try to push more of the digital currency out there. The great thing about having digital currency is that it's easy to move money around, it's easy to track. And it's just a matter of now of people being able to have some type of exchange to be able to say, okay, if I have a digital Chinese yuan, and then can I spend that and buy something in the U.S. market, and that can be easily converted. And so that's going to be the challenge later on. But yeah, so I think digital currency is going to play a big role in global trade very, very soon here.
Okay, so just to summarize your very important point is that digital currency will allow us to move money around easier, as well as track it for security or financial reasons. And this ties well into our next point. This is about the theme of this whole discussion today is about a digital currency in ASEAN, and for greater economic integration. So if we're easier able to move money around and to be able to track it, Cambodia is one of the fastest developing countries in ASEAN. Over the last 20 years, developing at a GDP rate growth of about 7%. ASEAN as a whole, we're growing very quickly in terms of digital technology adoption. So how do you see the implementation of digital currency in each of the ASEAN nations, or maybe even from the regional perspective? How will this kind of integrate all of our economies and further develop and boost Cambodia's economy?
Okay, that's a good and tough question there. So I know right now from the industry, we are looking at least the central bank is looking at connecting to Thailand and being able to pay cross-border seamlessly. I think Malaysia we're looking at Malaysia as well, and within ASEAN there's a ASEAN payment network that's been established, and that's hasn't fully rolled out quite yet, but it's something that all of the different banking associations are looking into, and how do we integrate to be able to do payments or transactions more efficiently. As some of you may know, when we do trade in terms of the cash, I think some of the central banks have to go in and put reserves in the different countries to be able to use their money and for them to use our money. That's a lot of movement of physical cash. With digital currency, that would actually solve that problem. And so this just could to help speed things up and move things much quicker. And Siriwat, you're right. I mean, if ASEAN, if we look at ASEAN as a whole, in terms of population, we'll have around 660 million people. I think that's maybe the third biggest in terms of the union itself. And in terms of economic growth or economic opportunities, we're probably the fifth biggest economy in the world. And so there's a lot of opportunities here. And the question for all of us is that how do we trade and move money around, but also monitor how money is being moved around in a more effective way. And I think this is where digital currency will play a key role in that.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, so it seems that, from the regional perspective for ASEAN, you mentioned, two types of interactions. There's, bilateral between two countries like Cambodia and Thailand, for example. You also have, multilateral within a regional ASEAN payment network. So overall, it seems quite, positive that, sort of implementing a national digital currency will allow us to, trade. Of course, trade is essential for the economy, and also just to be able to do this in a secure way, by tracking, because one trade-off, that always coexists in any sort of digital technology application is that, the goal of these technologies is to make things more convenient. But when things become too convenient or convenient to a certain extent, it's a trade-off with security. So it might be, faster to transfer money. It might be more convenient. It might be easier. But at the same time, our security, from a cybersecurity perspective, is also something to consider. So I think this ties in well also to the next question, that now that we have, a very positive note for the whole, region and how Cambodia can play its role, just from, our standpoint in our country here in Cambodia, what kind of policies are required to support digital currency at the national level?
I think from a national level, the digital currency, again, for me, I think it's just more, one thing is that we need to have some ways to really track, and also once we get on more digitally, we need to look at consumer protection. How do we make sure or ensure that the money we have in our digital wallets or whatever the bank account is safe, and the transaction we make, is also safe as well. So from a policy perspective, we need to really look at one, how are we handling the KYC and onboarding people. The second part would be how are we monitoring these different type of transactions going through. and how do we account for these type of transactions? In terms of the payment space, we talk about, actually we're actively talking about this right now, is the movement of money in different types and different methods, which is transfer versus payments. How are we paying taxes for that? And so these are the things that I think from a regulator perspective, they need to look at. How do we protect the consumer? Then how do we collect taxes?
Great. Yes. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. So from that aspect, and then ensure the security and the safety of this. And for me, in my opinion, I think we don't really need to look at digital currency as a. I think we should look at digital currency as more of just a replacement of physical cash. Whatever policy we have in place right now, we should keep it and implement it and enforce it. And this is again, we're not talking about cryptocurrency here. We're talking about digital currency. And so I think the same policy should apply, but again, more protect the consumer and bring consumer awareness on how technology works.
Great. Okay. So thank you for sharing. It seems like, three main policies stood out, that are either in place that need to be looked at more carefully with the arrival of digital currency, or they have to be, developed in the near future. The first being, consumer protection. So to protect the consumer in this new age of, let's say, transfer and payments, as you said. The second would be eKYC. So eKYC is, electronic know your customer. So usually KYC, know your customer, is a more traditional and manual process of, one, let's say, a financial institution getting to know more about their customer. What's the background, what's their history, seeing if, it kind of complies to all of their rules and regulations, and how can this be done electronically. So does the person have to physically go to the financial institution to be kind of like assessed, or can it be done electronically? And then the third point would be, at the end of the day, about tracking, about security. So all of this kind of falls under, a policy or law related to cybersecurity. Currently in Cambodia, this is being drafted. So again, this is a very hot topic which needs to be looked at. And I'm sure that, in the future, when we reach that point, there are many aspects that we do have to cover. And so I think just, in our little dialogue here, one last important big point will be related more to, what is the impact of digital currency on commercial banks, more traditional financial institutions, and also, how would this affect the national, let's say, push for de-dollarization? Because in Cambodia, we have a very unique country and system where, we have two currencies, USD and Khmer Rio. They coexist. When we pay for things, we pay with USD, and then sometimes we get a change in Khmer Rio. So how would moving to a digital platform kind of help us become less reliant on one currency and allow us to use, a more single and individual currency? Okay.
So to your first question, how would this impact the commercial banks? I think in terms of how it may impact them is more from the operational sides, in terms of if they have the technology readiness. So if they're not, or if they don't have a digital team to be able to support digital transformation, I think they may be left behind. And so this is something that I believe all of the commercial banks need to take a look at it and look at how they can digitize their business. If you look at the market today with banks like ABA, I believe they took about over 30% of the market shares already. And they've I think they established or start pushing forward within the last 2 or 3 years. And so with that, I mean, a lot of the other banks, if they don't do anything about it, I think they may be left behind. But with that said, I mean, I don't think digital currency will completely replace cash right away. It'll take some time for that to happen. And so the question is, will some of the commercial banks prepare themselves to to have this digital transformation within the next year or so. And that's really the question that they need to answer within the senior management team. Mm-hmm. Now, for the de-dollarization part, I believe that having a digital currency will be a step forward to de-dollarize the economy here. If you look at how easy it is for you to do transactions, here, I mean, it's just a matter of a currency exchange. And from a consumer perspective, it may be more favorable for you to have this currency exchange because it's already set within your device or your mobile app or your financial institution. Right now, if you were to go and spend money at an establishment and you give them dollars and they give you back in reals, the conversion is not that favorable. And so from a consumer perspective, I would rather just, pay with the reals if I know, if I can just convert it ahead of time. And so with that, I think it's a step forward. I think that once we start using more digital payments, you can see that we will be able to de-dollarize the economy here in Cambodia.
Okay, thank you for sharing. Yeah, so I think just back to the impact on traditional commercial banks. A very important word that you said is digital transformation, and being in this kind of like environment and work, everything revolves around digital this and that, and digital economy, digital business, digital transformation. But actually, the term digital transformation is less intimidating than it seems. But the misconception is that digital transformation is having the most advanced technology, the most sophisticated system. But actually, the transformation is not about the technology; it's about the people, both from the consumer side and the supplier side. To put it very simply, just look at Cambodia in the last year. Being hit by COVID-19, just like the rest of the world, we can confidently say that the entire nation went through digital transformation. If you look at the way that we order food, from Nyamo Pay Bun, Food Panda, Move, Block, all those things. I order things maybe 4 or 5 times a day. E-commerce through Facebook, through Instagram. There's so many ways that we unknowingly, use our phone. This is like an extension of our body, an extension of our mind. Whatever we think, whatever we want, it transforms and translates into, how can we achieve that digitally? Because we have to stay at home, we have to, social distance and self-isolate. It's kind of forcing us to change our behavior. And, transformation is all about change of behavior. It has to come from your change in mindset. But often, unless you're forced into that situation, you never change because you're already comfortable. And then going one step further, once we, go and look online and buy all these things and get all these deliveries, how do we pay for it? Traditionally, the supplier comes, we give cash, get change, physical money, and then they go. Now it's as easy as, scanning a QR code. We send, let's say, like an account number, and then we just type in a 4-digit passcode, and the money is sent. So this is just showing that the entire nation, and also I'm sure the rest of the world has really been going through a digital transformation. But I think that Cambodia specifically, we have a very young population. The median age is about 26. More than 2/3 of the population is under 30. Mobile data is extremely affordable. So all of these factors kind of allow us to have a very high adoption of technology. It means that whenever there's a new app, there's a new platform, there's a new practice of paying and buying things, we hop on very quickly. So I think overall it's very, very positive. And digital currency would just be something coming down in the future that hopefully we can also hop on. So I think, Chanda, do you have any final comments before we move on to the Q&A?
Yeah, so to your point, digital transformation, I mean, look at what we're doing right now on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
We're online and doing this discussion. And I think, people did ask, like, what's the impact of COVID? I said it accelerated digital adoption. And that's what happened here in this country. And I think if we look back 5 years from now, I think we see that COVID also has a positive impact here in this country. Imagine before, I remember when I joined the Association of Banks in Cambodia, we always would have to go and do physical meetings. Sometimes it's hard to go and get all of the CEOs of all these financial institutions to have time for a meeting. So now, within 1 or 2 hours, we're able to coordinate a meeting right away. And so this is, I think this is good in a sense. And so I'm really happy and look forward to see more of these type of things.
Yeah, I agree completely. The key point here is that COVID has completely accelerated our digital transformation. Whether we want it or not, just like Mr. Chanda said, all of us are here on a Sunday online. This wasn't something that was, compulsory or mandatory. It was just an option. Now that we have an option, you invite a guest speaker to come and give a lecture. If we can't turn up physically, we can still be online. So not to say that everything online and digital will completely replace or substitute, in-class face-to-face teaching. That's still very important. But it's just that we can kind of use it, technology in combination with physical and face-to-face to be more effective and more efficient. So I think we're coming close to the end. So I just have a few, let's say, questions from some of our delegates, and then I'll ask Mr. Chanda. We can have a little interesting discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question is, one of the justification for introducing digital currency is inclusion. However, doesn't it lead to exclusion instead, since it requires people to have electronic devices which some poor people may not be able to afford?
The thing that we have to look at is that digital currency is not a complete replacement of cash. And so I don't think there's a direction to replace cash completely yet. With that said, though, if you look at the mobile penetrations in Cambodia here, I think we have about almost 150%. Everybody here has at least 1 or 2 mobile devices. But then if you look at the use case in Africa with a company like M-Pesa, they basically can do digital payments through the dumb phone, the phone without, it's not a smartphone. So it's like the old phone where they just put in the USSD and then type in whatever it is, and they do transaction payments. So Wing originally was doing something like that here in Cambodia. And so for me, I don't think it's an exclusion. I think inclusion in the sense that you can still accept people from all, from people, whether it's poor or rich, is that most people will have a phone or a digital device, and then that they can still do financial transactions through there. And of course, if you don't, cash is still readily available, and it's something that they can still have. And so I don't think it's much of an exclusion per se.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I agree as well, because I think that, inclusion, we're trying to include, more people in Cambodia to use digital currency, but it doesn't mean that it's going to completely substitute, traditional currency, that everyone has to be included. If there are, let's say, some people who do not have electronic devices, I'm sure that within their environment or system, they're still able to use cash. But the point is to not get everyone, but to get more people, to increase the inclusion, but not complete inclusion.